everything flowing smoothly. You got to have stuff closed so it doesn't eat up the memory, and the bandwidth. So it's going through here, Corey. Let me know if you get the go ahead on your end. I do show that we're live here,
Okay.
uh, but let me just. Okay. I'm going to go to my personal page. Okay. Okay. Well, folks, we are back with Quantum Leap. I'm going to share this to Wide Angle Media. Sorry, we're in a little bit different location today. Some new Facebook changes. Um, Today, this is our 10:30 discussion, and we were kind of working out some technical kinks earlier. And thanks for your patience, Corey. And but I thought we had a great kickoff with our guest Heather
Yeah.
Repair on. So that check out that segment. Um, on our discussion today, I wanted to first say that I think we get a lot of views on these independent discussions. That's why I have them calendared, and we kind of talk about a lot of hot topics for solopreneurs and business owners. We always try to break new ground. So I'd encourage you, Corey, as you think about subjects that we haven't covered, maybe even mind sonar, like you were saying. We always love to do new things and talk about new things. So, um, but today we're going to talk about this solopreneur project, which is, really inspired in large part by you and Gail and, our BNI network. And that's the book that comes out this, this December 1st. And I'm going to put up I'll just put up page one of the table of contents here because let's see here. Hopefully I get the right one here. Okay. Um, so uh, it's currently for pre-sale on my website, and Corey's a major contributor to it. And it's really a book about a series of kind of aha moments that really helped my business out and things on this show that were like, this is something that solopreneurs should know about. And, Corey, you and Gail really run the gamut on this stuff about what's useful and how to explain this stuff. So I know you're really an expert on a number of these things, and you're widely cited in the book. We also have other contributors. I just find people learn the best from themselves. So other solopreneurs are going to give their stories. Most of that's going to be in the bonus material because it's challenging to get all the content together for the text in time, but we'll keep rolling it out in videos and the like. But this is a little different from previous books in that it's not all about mindset and kind of like the really fundamentals like your why, your purpose, a lot of the things that we go over on this show. It's more a nuts and bolts business book about how to, where the rubber meets the road on your story. I have your service packages. It is intended to be part of that previous trilogy, really as a bonus book, and that things that aren't covered there, this kind of fills in the gaps, so to speak. That's why I do have a chapter on mission, which we have some great content just introduced from Lyft that folks are encouraged to use your method to develop a mission statement. Um, so I'll put the link to pre-order the book. It's on sale for $14.95 right now on my website, www.davidmkirsten.com. I'll put um, the link, the hot link too, and who's going to benefit. Really, it's geared for solopreneurs, people in BNI who try to do everything themselves. And, one of the themes is really collaboration and how to kind of be bigger than a solopreneur by using collaboration. And we explore a lot of the same themes on our show here. So we won't go into each of these individually. I know this is almost like kind of an agenda for our show in large part, Quantum Leap. But as you look over that table of contents, Corey, and with the remainder of the episode, first I want to just get your thoughts on this concept of help, more marketing for solopreneurs. I think I really focus on like three key areas that I think people that do provide the most bang for the buck, but where we can grow the most. That's marketing, like social media, how all those pieces fit together. We see a lot of solopreneurs out there that are successful without a lot of that, but that can really help boost your revenues if you're not doing any social media or very little. That can really, it's really an essential piece of branding in today's world. The other big piece is networking, some network tips, which we've really done some advanced things on this show. And the last one's collaboration, another big one that we talk about on this show too. And I know you have some new thoughts on that. Ivan Meisner put out one book. I think he has another book coming out on some of this content as well. So there's really a lot of advances in collaboration as it pertains to solopreneurs, because I know, a lot of times solopreneurs get a bit of a bad rap in that they say, well, how do you do anything by yourself? And really, if you're a good solopreneur, you're not doing a lot of it by yourself. You're kind of working in teams or as collaborators in large part. But I don't know if you have any thoughts on the importance of some of those things for solopreneurs.
No, absolutely. But yeah, I don't know if we wanted to talk that now, but it's a good overview.
Yeah, yeah, kind of preaching to the choir here, and that I learned a lot of this stuff from you, and I find it's beneficial to write it up. It's things that I wish I had known from day one, and a lot of people say, well, why hasn't this been kind of written up before? And it has in Ivan's books, but a lot of people aren't going to pick up a book from like the 1980s in today's world, or for so to speak.
Sure.
So for you, I was just curious about what are key challenges for solopreneurs. If you kind of back up, maybe there's a few that I'm missing, or like what are like the key struggles that you see people out there about why they're not doing as well as they should, or maybe why a lot of solopreneurs are really failing or missing the mark in some way.
Sure. I mean, there's a whole number of different things that can get in people's way. I mean, there's time management is a big one. So just, how are you managing your time and understanding, I think, the value of your time has come up a lot. And it's challenging because as when we start a business and we're on our own or maybe have a couple of employees, we tend to wear all of the hats. And we think we should do whatever it is we can do. I mean, there's some expertise that we don't have, right? You don't write up your own contracts, hopefully, though you might make the mistake of downloading them. You would probably have an attorney that at least advises somewhere. But ultimately, a lot of people tend to do a lot of work that isn't necessarily in the expertise of the most value to them. So sometimes looking at if you can generate more income by doing what you're most valuable at, can you then outsource those things that you shouldn't be spending your time on? But that can be a challenge to kind of figure that out. And sometimes it's good to have somebody give help, provide an overview and look at your numbers, which is another thing. People don't look at their numbers, their profit and loss statements, right? So where are they spending the money and where is it coming in? And how much is coming in? And does it make sense on the things that you're spending money on? Because we've seen that where people, they're not earning a lot and they're doing a lot of things that may be not necessary. And if you're in a growth phase and it's not assisting your growth, then it doesn't make sense to do it. What else? Sales versus marketing. Many people focus a lot on marketing. We do that, right? We do the referral marketing, we do the social media marketing. But then when the phone rings, are we doing the actual sales and doing the follow up and making sure we're getting to that no? That's something a lot of times people get into business, they don't want to do a lot of sales, but that's if you don't sell, you don't get business. And so that can be a challenge. And then paying yourself. People tend to undervalue what they're doing. They're not charging as much as their competitors. They don't want to charge. They think their employee, their customers don't have enough money, or they start giving away expertise. And what can happen there is it becomes hard to pay yourself, right? So it's you draw from the profits of the business, but there's not a lot of profits. There's not a lot to draw. So I find that the best way to deal with that is to treat yourself as if you are an employee of the business and pay yourself according to the work that you're doing so that one, you have a consistent salary, but two, you have a really good idea of what each thing you're doing is worth so that you can eventually move it off to somebody else. So pay yourself for your sales, pay yourself for your management, pay yourself for your admin and everything else.
Yeah, well put. That classic book comes to mind, The E Myth, which I do have a chapter on business processes in the book, and I may add some of your comments there to that chapter because you really set that up. It's, finding out what generates the revenue and doing more of that. You said kind of working in your flame, not in the wax, or people get bogged down on stuff. So,
Yeah, it's
um,
pretty easy.
what what um what do you see about service packages for solopreneurs? I know you touched on it, not paying for ourselves, but how many options do you like to see in the structure, um, or just things that where people go wrong with how they package their services? I find this to be particularly important for higher value industries. Where you're not chopping down a tree or something that it's more complex. So it's how do you package that?
Yeah, but even there, I was just I've been following this guy for a while who does, arborist work and tree work, and he's got a subscription service now. So it's like we'll come out and inspect your trees and do what they need every year for, X number of dollars. And so now you have some certainty. And, I mean, if there's emergency work or whatever, that might add on to the cost, but people do like certainty. It's like I know how much my trees take to maintain and I hesitate to call, but maybe if I'm just paying year by year, it's a little easier and we can do that for, so a lot of service people can kind of find business like that. And it creates certainty for your clients and it also, engenders loyalty. Um, so it's something to think about, having a good service package, which is just sort of like, hey, we're going to be here for you. Um, you know, I mean, I don't see any reason why a plumber couldn't do that, or, I mean, even like home insurance is kind of set up that way, right? You pay for the insurance, but you don't know who's going to be fixing your appliance, which is a bit of a problem. Um, but yeah, so when it comes to other solopreneurs who are more service professionals, right? So or I mean, not service, but doing more intellectual work, I suppose. Um, I don't know if there's really any limit to the number of options, but it can be challenging if you present people with too many options. So we always suggest, like in sales, is to have like the low tier, the mid tier, and the high tier option, the VIP. And if you make that offer to everyone, people will choose according to what kind of fits their values, and or they'll ask you to choose for them, of course. So and then you might have add-on services or other things, but I think that the challenge can be is trying to create too many options makes it harder for people to understand what it is you do and what value you provide.
Yeah, I'll show you that chapter in the book, and I know you'll have some get your feedback on that too. Maybe we can get some additional reaction because I think we've talked about this topic a number of times, and I always find that it's very helpful to go over these options with a business coach too, because you really see if there's weaknesses or things can be reworked actually pretty easily. It makes a huge difference in how you talk about them, because if things weren't quite working as well, when you break down some of those barriers, it can
Right.
really energize your business. Yeah.
Yeah, and how you talk about them is important too, because we tend to fall into our own jargon and our own ideas. And having worked in IT and software for a long time, it's very easy to fall into that jargon and yet realize that nobody really understood anything I was trying to say. So it's it really dumb it down. And I highly recommend using AI for that these days, because it will you can just say, look, explain what I do as if you were a fifth grader, and it'll give you that kind of breakdown. It may not be perfect, but it'll help you reset what you're thinking. Um, because we'll use, abbreviations. Well, I mean, it just, there's so many things that we can do that will confuse people. So part of your package process is to avoid confusing people.
Thank you. I have a question here on revenue raising activities. I know we this is something that my old business coach I thought was very helpful when I first got into business, that to prioritize revenue raising activities. And you'd mentioned you got to find out kind of what raises the revenue, so to speak. So if you need to be really seated down with 10 prospects before 10 a.m., if that's what's going to bring in, insurance contracts or whatever, maybe a lot of people probably do everything but that in some mornings,
Right.
but it's kind of finding out what those things are. But what do you recommend? Um, I mean, well, just your thoughts on those revenue raising activities. But I also encourage folks, when you're starting a new business, sometimes you have to go out there and just get other sources of revenue to sustain your business. For example, you do technology consulting. I do a lot of work on tech support and live streaming that's kind of tangential to the
Sure.
business. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends on what you're in. I mean, it could even be doing joint ventures with people who have the kind of business you want, but it wouldn't see you as a competitor necessarily. So I've thought, as a coach and a partnership coach, Gail is awfully busy with the things that she's doing in our child, and she's got our marketing business. And so sometimes I feel like, even though I have a business partner, I don't really have a partner for my partnership coaching. And I could use somebody who would go out and do some sales and push and that kind of thing, because I'm better at more of the philosophical stuff, and the delivery. And so that's something also to think about, is like, what are your skill sets for revenue raising activities? If you're really good at sales, go out and do sales all the time, because that'll help you a lot. Then, of course, you got to service the clients. Are you good at customer service? And so I'm not, sometimes it can be, when you're getting started, is figuring out where your strengths and weaknesses lie, and maybe just ally with somebody who's in your industry, who can maybe mentor you on those things, and also, help you earn some income. So, I mean, we see this all the time with um, in the service professionals, where people work. You might be an auto mechanic, you work in the shop, but then you're also starting your own sort of business, doing side work, side gigs, and so on, and eventually that grows into something you can do full time. So think about that too within your profession. If you can do that and you're shoestringing it, you need to earn some money. Some people have jobs that support their business, and we're just talking about a coach who's has a job doing business development, but they also do coaching, and that's okay. We have to do what we have to do to put food on the table, as it were. And uh, but ultimately, it's good to have a vision for where you want your business to go, so that you can step away from that job when the time is right.
I had a good friend who used to say, when I worked in the communication business and some more kind of public policy work, the hardest part is doing the work, which I always find I am the best at, running around, kind of drumming up contacts. And because when you have a good network, that's what bogs you down, because you can spend weeks on the project, and then kind of your leads are dried up and things. So you got to keep capacity to keep doing that new stuff that comes in. So how do you kind of, I always found it was a good mix when I could really work 80% of my time on getting the work and only 20% doing it. And the
Hmm.
way I do that, you have to have people to help you do it, but yeah.
Yeah, everybody's a little different. Maybe some people would prefer to spend 80% of their time doing the work and figure out another way to. I mean, I would like to, happy to do more coaching and more of that. I find, the challenge for me is getting my writing done, getting my social media done, getting all that stuff out there. I love the networking and going out and meeting people, but there's a getting my persona, my expertise in front of the world has been a challenge for me, and maintaining consistency with that so I can be found, so that I can get more work. And so, sales, you've kind of got to find, like you said earlier, it's working in your wax versus your flame. Sometimes the flame is the work, sometimes the flame is, building the business, and sometimes it's marketing or sales, but you've got to have somebody who can handle the wax part of it. Um, and that may be you for a while, in which case you've got to, be diligent about it. That can be the hardest part. So, and ultimately, I think, we're kind of going back to what are the key challenges. I think for most solopreneurs, it is sales. Um, it's the first thing I was told as a coach was if you don't do sales, you're not a coach, right? You don't have anyone to coach. So you don't really have a business. So your first thing is you are a salesperson in your business. And until you have somebody who can sell for you, you are a salesperson. It was a little bit easier for me when I was doing software development. I didn't really have to sell. I would easily find gigs, and most people just needed what I had. So it was usually just an easy yes. But it becomes harder for a lot of things. And then you have competition, and you're not just competing for, against people who do what you do, but you're also competing for the dollars that other people have, right? Your clientele has. And so, what value do you bring that they want to give up those dollars that they could spend otherwise? So sales is it's probably the hardest part for most solopreneurs. If you love sales, that's great. But then you might not love actually doing the work, which so maybe you can parlay your sales skills into a business.
Yeah, I was just writing a part of the chapter on sales yesterday, and I'll show it to you because there's such a interesting relationship between marketing and sales. And like you're saying, a lot of people aren't doing enough sales, and they're not perfecting it enough to. So
Yeah.
we'll look at what more we can do on there. And I love our episodes where we talk about sales with Jason Cutter. I cracked open that book, so because you really need kind of a waterproof or kind of an airtight package to sell that works, that you stand behind, and then you need to sell enough of those to even perfect that further. So with those, like we're talking like high value people like coaches and things where the product is maybe, I don't know, $5,000 or $10,000. So yeah.
Yeah, and there's also what is your long-term strategy for that? Are you going to just continue to sell your hours? I mean, as you start out in the business, you may not be thinking that far ahead, but I mean, any and actually this is really important. It's something I've learned over more of my time in provisors and being around a lot of specialists in M&A and succession planning and all that is, from the very start of your business you ought to be thinking about what is your exit plan. And so if your idea is like, well, eventually I'm going to sell my business, that needs to be kind of built into the beginning of the business. It may not be a lot of things you can do now, but ultimately it's like keeping your books, keeping your numbers, knowing that is something you can do. Um, because if you come along and you want to sell your business, they're going to be looking at all that, like, is this consistent, or what are you selling? What are you offering? And, for coaches or videographers or other people, there may not be a business there to sell. And you might want to think about rather what is it that you can have that is a product or service that can live beyond what you do. Like my goal is eventually to take this partnership methodology and train other coaches. So now I would have a coaching school. And once that has some legs to it, that would actually be sellable because it's not about me anymore. It's about the methodology and how other people apply it, and having a certification process so that they can, somebody else could teach others how to do it.
Okay, good.
So,
Just due to the time, we can take this next question in 2 weeks when we come back. And that's something we've talked about a bit, speakerpreneurs. But
all right. Yeah.
yeah, I feel like some of this stuff we've went over in great detail, and we may even have better comments on some of the things in the past. But
Gail would be a person to ask about
Yeah.
that. She's working with a lot
Yeah.
of speakers now, and she might
Okay.
have some insights. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, maybe I'll forward her that
Okay.
prompt, and maybe she can I'll send her that question. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Good. Well, folks, that gives you enough to go on for where we're headed with Solopreneur. I do think it's going to be a unique project, and a lot of this stuff lives in our podcasts. And what I tried to do is kind of create our framework for a lot of this content that we already have, and then we'll continue to evolve it. But this is kind of my last of the trilogy. It's kind of a bonus book um, for now. So I'll put the links on how to buy it. 14.95 for right now, and definitely a lot of great contributions from you and Gail through your Lyft platform. And I don't really take things out of there. I just raise them that they're in Lyft and encourage folks to check out that platform. But I'll put the link to your guys' site in there. Take Wing Coaching, and then we'll see folks in a couple weeks for Quantum Leap when we resume. So
Okay. Sounds good. See you then.
thank you.
Bye,
Thanks
bro.
for joining us, everyone.